It was 3 a.m. in Fort Worth, Texas, when Sebastian froze on his own front porch, hands shaking, breath shallow, mind spinning. The night air felt heavy as he stared at the locked door, knowing the life he walked out of earlier might never open to him again. Willow was inside. She knew. And from the way the living room light glowed through the curtains, she wasn't sleeping. She couldn't. Sebastian's shirt still held traces of a floral scent that didn't belong in their home. He had tried rolling down his car windows on the drive back, hoping the wind would scrub away every reminder of what he'd done. But the faint perfume clung to him stubbornly, mocking every promise he had ever made to Willow. On the other side of that door, Willow sat trembling, her fingers wrapped around her phone, the same phone that had tracked him to a downtown hotel hours earlier. Tears streaked her cheeks as she stared at the map that confirmed her worst fear. She had grown up believing she would never let history repeat itself. Her father's betrayal had once broken her mother's heart, and now Willow faced the same wound. Upstairs, Sharon slept peacefully, unaware of how her world was about to shift. Her stuffed rabbit was tucked under her arm, her breathing slow and steady. If she could hear anything at all, it was the muffled hum of the air conditioner, not the cracking sound of truss falling apart downstairs. Sebastian placed his hand on the doorknob, but he couldn't bring himself to turn it yet. His chest ached with guilt. How did one thoughtless night collapse 12 years of marriage? How did a man who prided himself on building skyscrapers fail so completely at protecting his own home? Before he could gather himself, the door suddenly swung open. Willow stood there, eyes swollen, posture tense, pain written across her face. Her voice barely held together as she whispered the words that cut deeper than any shout ever could. "You broke our family tonight, Sebastian. Leave." Her hands trembled, but her will didn't. She had cried enough already. Now she was standing firm, not out of anger alone, but out of survival. The hallway light behind her revealed the large envelope placed on the console table. She hadn't signed anything, but the message was clear. She wasn't bluffing. She was done waiting for him to come home. She was done believing that working late meant dedication rather than distance. And you, the one watching this, pause for a moment and feel this deeply. Have you ever trusted someone so much that you believed they could never hurt you? Have you ever watched a familiar home feel completely foreign in one night? For Willow, this wasn't just about a marriage. It was about a childhood promise she made to herself. I will never live through what my mother lived through. The pain she swore she'd avoid was now standing at her front door, in the form of the man she once thought would protect her from everything. As Sebastian tried to speak, Willow raised the screen of her phone. The map glowed bright, his location pin stamped right over the Omni Hotel. Hours spent there. No calls, no messages, no explanations. And then she stepped closer, inhaled subtly, and recognized the unfamiliar perfume on his shirt. Her shake turned into a shiver of heartbreak. "How could you do this to us?" she whispered. Sebastian opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He could barely look her in the eyes. In that moment, the confident businessman looked like a man shrinking inside his own skin, drowning in regret. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't one of those harmless late nights at the office. This was the kind of mistake that tore people apart for generations. A seemingly stable interracial marriage in Fort Worth, built with love, built across cultures, built through trials, crumbled in one night because Sebastian sought comfort in a moment of weakness with a woman he couldn't even remember clearly now. The stakes weren't small. Sharon, family, faith, history, Willow's values, Sebastian's guilt. Everything crashed together in the doorway of their home at 3 a.m. Willow stepped back, her voice raw. "I trusted you with my whole life, and you threw it away." As Sebastian struggled to breathe, she closed her eyes tightly, trying to hold herself together just long enough to say the words she never thought would leave her lips. "Leave, Sebastian, right now." The wind blew softly. A car passed in the distance. A dog barked down the street. But inside that home, silence grew louder than any sound. Because, at that moment, the question wasn't whether Sebastian cheated. The question was whether anything in their world could survive it. Now, as you listen, ask yourself, will this marriage survive betrayal? Will Willow ever be able to look at him again without feeling broken? Can Sebastian fix the damage, or has he already lost everything he ever loved? Before we continue this heartbreaking journey of love, mistakes, separation, and the fight for redemption, welcome to Mr. Graham's Stories, where we share impactful life lessons through memorable stories. If you're new, we're glad you're here. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and join us for more inspiring stories. But first, please like this video, leave a comment, and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. It truly helps push this story to more people. The evening had started with nothing more dramatic than a networking event in a downtown Fort Worth ballroom, one of those polished gatherings filled with real estate investors, developers, and deal-hungry executives. Sebastian had planned to show his face, shake a few hands, and get home in time for the family movie night he had promised Willow and Sharon. But the week had worn him thin, and he was running on stress and ambition more than rest. When he called Willow earlier, he tried to sound upbeat. "I'll be late, love, this thing is dragging." She heard the chatter behind him, the faint clink of glasses, and did her best to swallow her disappointment. Fridays were supposed to be family nights. She had made popcorn. Sharon had picked the movie. But instead of pushing her frustration, she simply said, "Please, don't be too late." She meant it. She needed him home. Their marriage needed him home. But Sebastian hung up believing one more hour wouldn't hurt. Inside the ballroom, his college friend, the loud, carefree type who never outgrew his party energy, slapped him on the shoulder. "Man, loosen up. You look like a spreadsheet grew legs and walked in here." Sebastian forced a laugh. "I'm fine. Just tired." "One drink," his friend urged, raising 2 fingers toward the bartender. "You're always working. Celebrate a little. That deal you closed paid for half the folks in this room." Sebastian hesitated. He had been the responsible one for so long. Maybe one drink would take the edge off. Maybe it would make up for the endless grind he kept putting Willow through. Maybe it would quiet the gnawing guilt of missing yet another family night. One, he agreed. But 1 became 2. 2 became 3. The ballroom faded into a blur of music, laughter, and dim lights. His friend eventually waved goodbye, stumbling toward the exit, leaving Sebastian at the bar with an empty glass and the echo of old memories. That was when she walked up. A woman he vaguely remembered meeting earlier during introductions at the mixer, polished, confident, young, and entirely too friendly. She slid onto the bar stool beside him with the ease of someone used to attention. "You look like the only interesting person left here," she teased. Sebastian chuckled in a tired, sloppy kind of way. "Long week." She ordered a drink, turned toward him, and let conversation fall into place as smoothly as ice dropping into a glass. The more she leaned in, the more he felt an ego boost he didn't even realize he craved. Someone was paying attention to him, not asking about invoices, not complaining about meetings, not reminding him of promises he missed, just laughing at his jokes and calling him charming. Meanwhile, back at home, Willow checked her phone for the 5th time. 9:24 p.m., 9:51 p.m., 10:18 p.m. She didn't want to nag. She didn't want to be the wife who tracked her husband's every move. But something felt wrong tonight. He was never this unreachable. Ever. She sent a text. "Are you okay?" Delivered. Read nothing. Replied nothing. Her chest tightened. She set her phone down and picked it up again immediately. Finally, at nearly 11 p.m., she placed a blanket over the sleeping Sharon and walked to the kitchen sink, gripping the counter as fear crept up her spine. Back downtown, the rooftop lounge was half empty as the night stretched on. The band had packed up, the air felt cooler, and the drinks hit harder. Sebastian told himself he should leave. He even stood once, reaching for his blazer, until the woman touched his arm lightly and said, "Come on, you can relax for one night." It wasn't the touch that undid him. It was the feeling of being seen, appreciated, desired. 3 things he hadn't prioritized at home because he thought being a provider was enough. He followed her to a quieter corner, then toward the elevator, a trail of poor judgment pulling him forward. At home, Willow stared at her silent phone, anxiety twisting into dread. She opened the Find My Phone app, not something she used casually, but something they both agreed to keep active for emergencies. As the map loaded, her heart thudded. He wasn't at the office. He wasn't on the road. He wasn't anywhere he should have been. His phone was pinned at the Omni Hotel downtown. Her mouth went dry. She whispered, "Dear God, no." Anger and heartache collided in her chest. She grabbed her keys so fast her hand trembled. She didn't bother putting on shoes beyond slipping into sandals. She didn't grab a jacket. She didn't even realize she still wore her jeans from earlier. Her daughter slept upstairs. Her family was collapsing downstairs. And Willow drove because sitting still would have crushed her lungs. Her mind wasn't filled with fantasies or assumptions. It was filled with memories. Her mother crying at the dining table after her father didn't come home. The night she promised herself she'd never live through that. The vow she made to choose better. The vow she thought she kept. Traffic lights blurred as she sped through the quiet city streets, whispering prayers, bargaining with God, begging for any explanation that didn't break her marriage apart. But as she pulled into the hotel parking lot, the truth greeted her cruelly. Sebastian's car was right there, parked neatly, unmoved for hours. Willow turned off the engine and gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles whitened. Her chest rose and fell sharply. Her eyes filled, then overflowed. Her worst fear wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was a reality sitting on 4 tires in front of her. And yet she waited. For an hour, silent, still, braking slowly, until finally, at nearly 3 a.m., Sebastian walked out of the lobby, looking disheveled, guilty, and lost. She didn't need details. She didn't need explanations. She didn't need to know the name of the woman. She had seen everything she needed to see. The quiet inside the house felt heavier than the Texas night outside. When Sebastian stepped through the door, he moved cautiously, hoping he could slip in unnoticed, maybe grab a shower, maybe think of a way to explain the unexplainable. But the moment he closed the door behind him, he saw her. Willow, sitting on the couch, fully dressed, eyes red, shoulders trembling in a way she tried to disguise by gripping her own elbows. She had been waiting, not sleeping, not resting, waiting. Sebastian swallowed hard. "Willow, you're still up." His voice cracked before he even finished the sentence. "Don't." Her voice was soft, but sharp enough to stop him instantly. She didn't have the strength to raise her volume. Her pain carried enough force on its own. He took a step forward, instinctively reaching for honesty, even though he didn't have any left to offer. "I can explain." Willow stood, and everything inside Sebastian collapsed a little more. Her hand shook as she lifted her phone. The screen glowed in the dim room. A map, a location pin, the Omni Hotel. "I tracked you." Her voice trembled, but the words were steady. "I wasn't going to, but you didn't answer. You didn't call. You didn't come home. So I checked." Sebastian's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She stepped closer, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "You were there for hours, Sebastian." Hours. There was no accusation in her tone, just heartbreak. "Willow, I drank too much. I didn't want to drive. She cut him off with a raised hand. "Is that the best you can do? A man who built an entire company suddenly can't figure out how to call his wife." Her voice cracked on the word wife, and that crack shattered something in both of them. Sebastian tried again, desperation rising in his chest. "I made a stupid, terrible decision. I didn't mean for anything to happen. I never meant to hurt you." But Willow wasn't looking at his face anymore. Her eyes drifted lower, to his shirt, to the faint scent he didn't even know was still clinging to him. She inhaled sharply. Her entire body stiffened. "That smell," she whispered. Sebastian froze. Willow's hand covered her mouth, a sob breaking through as she stepped back. "Please tell me that isn't someone else's perfume." He didn't answer. He couldn't. And that silence did what no argument ever could. It confirmed everything. She dropped her phone on the couch, folded her arms around herself as if trying to keep her ribs from collapsing inward. "I trusted you, Sebastian. I trusted you with my whole life." He moved toward her, tears forming, voice shaking. "Willow, please, please listen. It was a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. I was drunk, I was stupid, I hate myself for it. Please, just don't touch me." Her voice cut like glass this time. He froze mid-step. Willow wiped her cheeks harshly, trying to gather the strength she needed for the next words. "Do you know what hurts the most? It's not the cheating. It's that you didn't even care enough to come home. You stayed there, while your daughter waited for you." At the sound of Sharon's name, Sebastian let out a broken breath. "I love her. I love you both. Willow, please, please don't do this. I'll fix everything. I swear I will." "You can't fix this tonight," she said, voice low but firm. "And you can't stay here." His heart dropped. "Willow, no. Don't ask me to leave. Not tonight. Please." She closed her eyes, steadying herself. "I'm not raising my daughter in a home filled with lies. Not after what I watched my mother go through. Not after the promises you made. Not after this." Sebastian wiped his face with both hands, panic rising. "I'll sleep on the couch. I'll sleep outside. Just don't kick me out." Don't shut me out from Sharon. I can't lose. Get out." The words were quiet, but final. She walked to the front door, opened it. She didn't look at him. She didn't have to. Her stance spoke for her. Sebastian stood there, torn between begging and respecting the boundary she was drawing. He stepped closer, stopping a few feet behind her. "Willow," he whispered, voice raw. "I'm so sorry." Her fists tightened at her sides. A tear slipped down her cheek. But she didn't turn around. "Leave, Sebastian. Please, before I break even more." He stood there a moment longer, memorizing the shape of her shoulders, the sound of her breathing, the weight of the moment that would haunt him forever. Then he picked up his keys with shaking hands, opened the screen door, and walked out into the night. Behind him, Willow shut the door slowly. Not a slam, not anger, just quiet heartbreak. The lock clicked, a small sound, but heavy with finality. Sebastian stood on the porch alone, staring at the door that once led to his safest place. Now it felt like a border he had no right to cross. He wanted to kneel. He wanted to scream. He wanted time to rewind. But all he could do was turn and walk to his car. He opened the door, sat down, and gripped the steering wheel so tightly his fingers ached. He looked up at the second-floor window where Sharon slept peacefully, unaware that her family had just cracked apart downstairs. His chest tightened until breathing felt impossible. He started the engine and drove through the dark, empty streets, searching for anywhere to hide from the truth he created. Hours later, he ended up in the parking lot of a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, far from the hotel he wished he could erase from his memory. He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against the steering wheel as the weight of the night crashed over him. The millionaire who once thought he had it all sat alone, drowning in regret, realizing that money couldn't rebuild what he had broken. And for the first time in years, Sebastian cried like a man who had everything to lose and just lost it. The morning after the confrontation began with a silence so thick Willow could feel it pressing against her chest. Sunlight filtered across the living room floor, but nothing about it felt peaceful. She sat at the edge of the couch, still wearing the same clothes from last night, legs drawn close, staring blankly at the family pictures hanging on the wall. Her eyes drifted toward one photo, the three of them at a 4th of July picnic. Willow's smile was wide, Sebastian's arm wrapped around her waist, and Sharon sat on her shoulders laughing. Back then, happiness didn't feel fragile. Back then, Willow believed her marriage stood on solid rock. Now, even looking at that memory felt like touching glass that could fracture under her hand. Upstairs, Sharon stirred. The soft patter of her footsteps echoed from the hallway. Willow inhaled deeply, wiped her face, and forced herself to stand. She had rehearsed the lie in her mind while the sun rose. Sharon walked into the kitchen clutching her rabbit. "Mom, where's Dad? He promised waffles today." The question hit Willow harder than any argument last night. She turned, masking the heartbreak behind a gentle smile. "Sweetie, Daddy left early for work. He didn't want to wake us." Sharon frowned slightly but nodded. "Will he be back before dinner?" Willow forced her voice not to break. "We'll see, baby. Come eat breakfast." As Sharon climbed into her chair, Willow turned her back quickly, pretending to reach for the waffle mix. Tears brimmed again, but she blinked them away. Sharon didn't need to see that. Not now. Across town, Sebastian sat motionless inside his car in the parking lot of a small motel. His head rested against the seat, eyes swollen from the night before. Sleep had come and gone in brief waves, none of it restful. His shirt was wrinkled, his hands unsteady, and every memory from last night replayed mercilessly in his mind. He reached for the glove compartment and pulled out an old envelope. Inside were snapshots from their early years. He hadn't looked at these in ages. There was the Ferris wheel photo, Willow laughing as he pulled her close mid-ride. There was the hospital picture, him holding newborn Sharon with tears streaking down his face while Willow leaned in with a tired but joyful smile. There was their first home purchase, standing outside holding the keys, their excitement unmistakable. Images of a life he vowed to protect. Images of a life he jeopardized. He pressed a hand over his mouth, as if that could keep the pain from spilling out. "How did I do this to them?" He whispered. He thought of Willow's face last night, the way she wouldn't look at him, the pain trembling in her shoulders, the finality in her voice. He didn't even realize he was crying again until a drop fell onto one of the photos. Back at home, Willow packed a small lunch for Sharon, her movements mechanical. Every action felt heavy, zipper, napkin, sandwich, fruit cup. Normally, Sebastian packed the lunch on Fridays. Today, she moved around the kitchen alone. After dropping Sharon at school, Willow sat in her car with her hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Her heart was exhausted from crying, exhausted from holding everything in, exhausted from the life-altering decision she had made last night. She needed answers. She needed guidance. She needed to reclaim control of her life. So she drove to a brick office building 10 minutes away, a family law attorney's office. Her stomach churned as she approached the glass door. She wasn't committing to anything yet. She wasn't ready to sign away her marriage, but she needed to understand her options. She needed to protect her daughter. She needed to know what her life might look like if she couldn't forgive Sebastian. Inside, the waiting room felt cold, too quiet, too real. Brochures on child custody, separation rights, and property division lined a wooden table. Each brochure looked like another knife. When the receptionist asked her to fill out a form, Willow's hand trembled as she wrote her name. It wasn't anger guiding her now. It was heartbreak. It was loss. It was fear. She waited 20 minutes before the attorney called her in. 20 minutes of her tapping her knees, trying not to burst into tears again. 20 minutes of replaying last night, the evidence on her phone, the perfume on his shirt, the ache in her chest. When the attorney began explaining legal paths, Willow listened, nodding quietly. She didn't ask questions. She didn't commit. She just absorbed, her mind both numb and overwhelmed. By the time she stepped outside, the morning sun felt too bright for the heaviness inside her. Across the city, Sebastian was still in his car, clutching the photos to his chest. He never imagined he would wake up in a motel while his family woke up without him. He never imagined Willow would look at him with such disappointment. He never imagined Sharon would be confused and asking for waffles alone. He wiped his face and whispered to himself, "You did this, Sebastian. You did this." 2 people, 2 broken hearts, 1 shattered family. The morning after the betrayal had only begun, and already the consequences were everywhere. The following evening, the house felt unusually still. Willow moved around the living room with deliberate calm, straightening cushions, checking Sharon's backpack, and glancing at the clock. More often than necessary. She didn't want to admit it, but she was nervous about Sebastian coming back to see Sharon for the first time since the confrontation. Sharon sat at the dining table coloring, humming softly to herself. She seemed lighter than yesterday, unaware of how fragile the air felt around her mother. At exactly 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Willow's breath hitched. She wiped her palms on her jeans before opening the door. Sebastian stood on the porch, hair combed, shirt clean but wrinkled, eyes tired. He looked like a man walking into a courtroom, not to defend himself, but to accept whatever judgment was handed down. "Hi," he said quietly. "Come in," Willow replied, using the same steady voice she used when speaking to parents during difficult meetings at school. Controlled, professional, emotionally armored. When Sharon saw her father step inside, her eyes lit up instantly. "Daddy." Sebastian's entire face softened. He crouched down and opened his arms as Sharon rushed into them. He held her a little too tightly at first, like he wasn't sure she was real. Like hugging her meant hugging the last intact piece of his life. "I missed you, sweetheart," he whispered. "I missed you too. Are we still making the soccer poster for school tomorrow?" His voice cracked slightly with relief. "Of course we are." Willow watched the exchange with a tight chest. Seeing Sebastian interact with their daughter, the natural ease, the warmth, pulled at something deep inside her. But she couldn't let that feeling blur her clarity. Not yet. "Her supplies are in the kitchen," Willow said, gesturing with a small nod. "Okay, thank you," he replied. Sharon grabbed Sebastian's hand and pulled him excitedly toward the table. He followed, grateful for her innocence, grateful she didn't know the truth, grateful for this tiny moment of normalcy. Willow stayed in the living room, standing by the console table, listening to their conversation float through the house. "Daddy, look! I drew a rabbit wearing sunglasses. That's incredible. I think this rabbit is cooler than me. No one's cooler than you." A soft ache spread through Willow's chest. She knew children didn't understand marital fractures. All they saw were the parents they loved, the routines they depended on. She walked into the kitchen slowly. Sebastian straightened when he saw her, waiting for a cue, unsure of what was allowed. "Sharon," Willow said gently, "Mommy needs to talk to Daddy for a moment. Can you finish the rabbit while we're in the hallway?" "Okay," Sharon chirped. Sebastian followed Willow to the hallway near the laundry room. The moment they were alone, the tension thickened, Not angry, not hostile, but uncertain, like two people still standing in the ruins of something they once built. Willow folded her arms, grounding herself. "I told you I'd be honest with you," she began. "So I need to let you know. I spoke with a lawyer today." Sebastian's throat tightened. He nodded slowly, eyes lowering. "I figured you would. You have every right to." "I'm not saying I'm filing anything right now," she added, her tone calm but serious. "But I needed to understand what this situation could mean for me and for Sharon." He swallowed, lifting his eyes to hers. "I understand. I know I caused this, and I'll accept whatever you decide, Willow. I deserve whatever comes." She studied him carefully. There was no defensiveness, no excuses, no attempts to negotiate, just remorse. "But for Sharon," she continued, "I want us to stay civil. She doesn't need more confusion right now." "Of course," he agreed instantly. "I don't want to cause her any more pain." They stood quietly for a moment, two hearts exhausted from the storm but trying to find neutral ground. Then Willow asked the question she dreaded, "Where are you staying?" He hesitated before answering. "A motel off the highway." Her chest tightened again, but she didn't show it. "Oh." She didn't ask which motel. She didn't need details. Sebastian stepped slightly closer, maintaining the respectful distance she had set. "Thank you for letting me see her tonight. I didn't expect you to allow that so soon." "You're her father," Willow said simply. "I don't want to take that from her." Her voice softened almost imperceptibly at the end. Sebastian noticed it but didn't push. He just nodded, grateful. They returned to the kitchen where Sharon had drawn 3 rabbits now, all wearing different accessories. "Dad, help me with the poster border." Sebastian smiled and sat with her, carefully outlining stars along the edges of the board. As he worked, he allowed himself to breathe, just a little. This moment, as painful as it was layered, was also a small mercy. Willow watched them from the counter. She wasn't ready to forgive. She wasn't ready to soften, but she could see one truth clearly. Despite everything, Sebastian loved his daughter deeply, and Sharon adored him. That mattered. She allowed the silence to settle before walking back to the living room. She needed space, and Sebastian respected that by staying focused on Sharon. When the poster was finished, Sebastian hugged Sharon again and promised to call her tomorrow. He walked toward the door where Willow stood. "I'll be here the same time next week, if that's all right," he asked gently. Willow nodded. "Yes." Their eyes met briefly, full of hurt, caution, and something unspoken. As Sebastian stepped out into the cooling evening air, Willow called after him quietly, "Drive safe." He turned, surprised. "I will. Thank you." He walked to his car with a weight he carried alone, leaving Willow to close the door softly behind him. Family is complicated, and forgiveness takes time. If you're still with this story, tap the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe, so YouTube shows this video to more people who need these lessons. Morning sunlight poured gently through the kitchen window, but it brought none of its usual warmth. The house felt quieter than normal, too quiet. Willow stood at the counter preparing Sharon's breakfast, yet her movements were slow and distant, as if her mind were somewhere far away. Grief could do that, turn the simplest tasks into emotional marathons. Sharon shuffled into the room wearing her school hoodie, clutching her rabbit. She looked tired, her eyes lingering on the empty chair at the dining table. "Mom," she whispered, "is Dad coming tomorrow?" Willow forced herself to turn, her smile soft but tight around the edges. "He'll see you soon, baby. He loves you very much." Sharon nodded, though confusion clouded her expression. "Did you and Dad have a big argument?" Willow froze for a heartbeat, feeling the pain of that question settle deep inside her ribs. She crouched down and cupped Sharon's cheeks gently. "Grown-ups sometimes disagree, sweetheart, but we're both here for you. That part will never change." Sharon didn't look entirely convinced, but she didn't push further. She sat down at the table, picking at her waffles instead of devouring them the way she used to on school mornings. Watching her daughter's spirit dim ever so slightly made Willow's own heartbreak grow heavier. Betrayal hurt, but watching it touch her child was agony. After dropping Sharon at school, Willow returned home and sank into the armchair, pulling a blanket over her legs. She closed her eyes, and instantly the memories from last night surged back. Sebastian's shirt, the perfume, his trembling face, her own voice cracking as she told him to leave. Each memory replayed like it had been branded into her mind. "I can't believe this is my life right now," she whispered to the quiet room. For years she had imagined growing old with Sebastian, celebrating anniversaries, cheering at Sharon's milestones, dancing in the living room during quiet Sunday nights. But now those visions felt stolen, replaced by a film of distrust she never asked for. Meanwhile, across town, Sebastian sat alone at a small motel desk. A pen lay beside a blank sheet of paper. He had been staring at it for nearly 20 minutes, trying to gather the courage to write what needed to be written. He had apologized verbally. He had cried. He had begged. But he knew Willow deserved something more intentional, something thought out, not desperate words spilling from a broken moment. So he picked up the pen. "Willow," he began slowly. The pen shook in his grip, but he kept writing. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything at all. I just want you to know that I understand the pain I caused, and I will carry that responsibility for the rest of my life." Each word cost him something. He paused, looking around the dim motel room. The silence was suffocating. He thought of their anniversary dinners, their long talks on late nights, the days when they couldn't pass each other in the hallway without touching. He wrote it all down, how he lost his way, how he let stress and pride cloud his judgment, how none of it excused his mistake. He wrote about Sharon. He wrote about the life they built. He wrote about the man he wanted to be again. By the time he finished, the page held his heart in ink. He folded it carefully and placed it in an envelope. He would deliver it tomorrow. Not ring the doorbell, not wait, not intrude. Just give her the letter as a gesture of respect. Back at home, Willow tried to distract herself with chores, laundry, wiping counters, organizing the hallway closet. But everything she touched reminded her of him. The shirt he left, hanging on the laundry hook. The cologne bottle still sitting on his dresser. The coffee mug he always used. Each object felt like a small betrayal now. She stopped midway through folding a towel and allowed herself to cry again, this time without trying to hide it. Grief wasn't linear. It came in waves, some small, some heavy enough to knock her breath away. Sharon returned home from school later that afternoon looking withdrawn. She hung her backpack on the hook and walked straight to her room. Willow followed quietly and found her sitting on the floor rearranging her stuffed animals. "You okay, sweetie?" Willow asked, sitting beside her. Sharon shrugged, looking down. Everyone else had both parents at the soccer meeting today. "I only had you." Willow's chest tightened. "I know, baby, but Daddy wanted to be there. He just couldn't today." "Because of your disagreement?" Sharon asked hesitantly. Willow nodded gently. "Yes, but we're both still here for you." Sharon leaned into Willow's side, and Willow wrapped her arm around her daughter, kissing her head. "You're not alone, Sharon. You'll never be alone." But the truth was undeniable. Their family routines were no longer routines. They had become reminders of everything that was breaking. Dinner felt incomplete. Bedtime felt echoing and hollow. Even the house seemed to breathe differently. Instead of 3 voices, there were just 2. Instead of shared laughter, there were quiet attempts to pretend everything was fine. That night, Willow tucked Sharon into bed, watching her daughter cling tightly to her rabbit as if it were a shield against the uncertainties swirling around her. After turning off the bedroom light, Willow stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, fighting another wave of exhaustion. Her heart felt stretched thin, between being strong for Sharon, grieving the marriage she once cherished, and trying to understand how everything slipped so far so fast. In the motel, Sebastian sat at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the dark window. Loss had a way of making even familiar places feel foreign. He felt detached from everything that once centered him. Work didn't matter. Money didn't matter. Nothing mattered compared to the pain in Willow's eyes and the quiet confusion in Sharon's. He whispered into the darkness, "I'm going to fight for them, even if it takes the rest of my life." His voice broke at the end. 2 homes, 2 hearts aching. One fractured family trying to navigate the wreckage. This was the new reality neither of them wanted. One marked by wounded trust, anxious moments, and attempts to move forward one breath at a time. And the adjustments were only beginning. The morning after that painful motel room breakdown, Sebastian woke with a kind of heaviness he had never felt before. It wasn't just regret. It was the realization that nothing in his life made sense without Willow and Sharon. Every corner of the motel room reminded him of what he lost. The mismatched furniture, the laminate desk, the humming air unit. They felt like the opposite of home. His real life was miles away, locked behind a door he no longer had the right to open. He sat at the edge of the bed, rubbing his face with both hands. Today had to be different. If he didn't take real steps toward change, deep, uncomfortable steps, then everything he hoped to rebuild would crumble before it ever had a chance. His first step was the hardest. Sebastian drove across town to meet his mother. She lived in a quiet subdivision where the houses were lined with neat lawns and neighbors who waved at everyone. He had texted her earlier saying, "I need to talk. It's important." She replied instantly, telling him to come right over. When she opened her front door, her face softened with concern. "Honey, what's happened? You look exhausted." He stepped inside, the familiar smell of her lemon candles hitting him instantly. Normally it felt comforting. Today, it felt like a reminder of how far he'd fallen. They sat at the kitchen table. Sebastian's chest tightened, but he forced the words out. "Mom, I messed up. I messed up badly. I cheated on Willow." Her hand went to her mouth, eyes filling with disbelief. "No, Sebastian, no. Why?" He shook his head, tears welling. "There's no excuse. I was careless, stupid, drunk, selfish. I hurt her. I hurt our daughter. I destroyed everything good in my life." His mother reached across the table and held his hand. "You have to fix this. Not by rushing Willow, but by fixing you." "I know," he whispered. "I'm going to try." Next, he made another uncomfortable call to Willow's parents. He owed them honesty too. He had been part of their family for 12 years. They deserved to hear the truth from him, not secondhand. Willow's mother answered, "Sebastian?" His throat tightened. "I'm so sorry," he said immediately, voice trembling. "I hurt your daughter. I betrayed your trust. I came to say that I take responsibility, and I will do whatever it takes to make this right." There was a long silence. Finally, her mother replied, voice heavy. "You broke her heart. She didn't deserve this." "I know," he said softly. "I'm so sorry." Her father's voice came through the line next, stern but controlled. "You have a long road ahead of you, son. If you're serious about repairing this, you'd better prove it." Sebastian nodded, even though they couldn't see him. "I will." He hung up feeling raw, exposed, and stripped of pride, but also relieved. Accountability was painful but necessary. Every moment of honesty carved out space for something better. By noon, he arrived at the therapist's office. He had booked an appointment days ago, but after last night he doubled his commitment. 2 sessions a week, no exceptions. The room was calm, with soft chairs and warm lighting. The therapist, a middle-aged man with a steady presence, greeted him. "Tell me what brings you here, Sebastian." Sebastian didn't sugarcoat anything. "I betrayed my wife. I damaged our family, and I want to understand why I made the stupidest decision of my life." For the next hour, he talked about everything. The pressure of work, the constant strain of trying to be the provider, the loneliness he didn't want to admit, the way one reckless moment altered everything. The therapist listened carefully, stopping him only to ask pointed questions. "You didn't cheat because you lack love for Willow. You cheated because you lack balance, boundaries, and emotional tools. Guilt is useful right now, but long-term, you must replace guilt with growth." Sebastian nodded, absorbing every word. "Come twice a week," the therapist continued. "This isn't about saving your marriage, it's about rebuilding yourself." "I will," Sebastian said, and he meant it. Later that afternoon, Sebastian returned to his office. His team stared at him in surprise. He looked different, weary, yet purposeful. He called an emergency meeting with his executives. "I'm stepping back," he announced. "Effective immediately, I'm delegating half of my project load and restructuring my schedule. I'll only work until 5. No more late nights unless it's an absolute emergency." His business partner blinked. "Is everything okay?" "No," Sebastian said truthfully, "but I'm working on it." He didn't explain further. He didn't know the company his personal tragedy. What mattered was this: he would no longer prioritize deals over his family. No more missed dinners. No more forgotten commitments. No more letting work become an escape. He cleared his calendar of unnecessary meetings. He denied a lucrative trip to Houston. He instructed his assistant to reroute everything that wasn't urgent. For the first time in years, Sebastian felt the weight of work sliding off his shoulders. It was scary, but it was freeing. With the day winding down, he returned to his motel room. He pulled out a stack of blank stationery, the same kind Willow once used to leave him small love notes. He wrote another letter, and another. He wrote about his failures, his reflections, what he learned in therapy, and how he planned to rebuild his character, not for her attention, but because he needed to. Each letter was different. Honest, vulnerable, without excuses. He didn't send them all at once. He delivered them one at a time, placing each envelope gently in her mailbox, always without knocking. Each letter was a step, not toward getting her back, he knew he wasn't entitled to that, but toward proving that he could change. After placing the first letter in her mailbox, Sebastian stood on the sidewalk for a moment, staring at the house he once moved freely through. The porch light was off. The curtains were drawn. It didn't feel like rejection. It felt like boundaries, and he respected that. He whispered to himself, "This is the beginning, not the end." Then he walked back to his car, leaving the first of many sincere attempts at redemption behind. Willow sat on the edge of her bed early the next morning, staring at the envelope resting on her nightstand. Sebastian had slipped it into the mailbox sometime before sunrise. She knew his handwriting immediately, sharp strokes, slightly slanted, the same handwriting he used on birthday cards and grocery lists. For several minutes, she simply looked at the envelope, her heart pounding harder than she wanted to admit. Part of her wanted to toss it into the drawer and forget it existed. Another part, a softer, quieter part, wanted to see what he had to say. Eventually, she exhaled and picked it up. She opened it slowly, unfolding the paper as if it were something fragile. The first line made her chest tighten. "I don't expect forgiveness. I expect to earn every ounce of trust I lost." Willow swallowed, already feeling her eyes burn. She read every word, taking her time. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't manipulative. It wasn't a plea for sympathy. It was honest, raw, filled with reflection rather than excuses. He admitted how far he had drifted, how blind he had been to the cracks forming in their marriage, and how deeply he regretted the choices that shattered everything. When she reached the final line, "I know I broke something sacred, and I'm not asking you to repair it for me. I'm asking for the chance to repair myself." Her tears fell. She folded the letter carefully and placed it back on the nightstand. It didn't heal her. It didn't erase her pain, but it stirred something. Conflict, sadness, and an unexpected flicker of hope tangled into one. Later that afternoon, Willow stepped onto the porch to bring in a package. As soon as she approached the mailbox, she noticed the backyard gate slightly ajar. Her eyebrows pulled together. Had she left that open? She walked around the side of the house and paused at the sight before her. The wooden fence, the one that had been leaning dangerously for months, was no longer tilted. The broken slats were replaced, the posts reinforced, all the nails hammered cleanly into place. She touched the fresh wood, realizing instantly who had done it. Sebastian. There was no note, no knock at the door, no attempt to be seen. He had done the work quietly, without expecting recognition. Willow breathed in slowly, surprised by the warmth spreading through her chest. She had complained about this fence at least a dozen times over the past year, how it needed repairs, how Sharon's soccer ball kept rolling into the neighbor's yard because of the gaps. Sebastian had always said he'd get to it eventually, but now, separated, he finally did it. Not because she reminded him, not because he wanted praise, but because he knew it mattered to her. She wasn't sure what to do with the feeling that came next. Over the following week, Willow noticed more small signs of his presence, not intrusive, not overwhelming, just quiet efforts that revealed consistency. On Tuesday, she returned home to find her garbage bins brought in from the curb. On Thursday, her walkway had been swept. On Friday morning, the flower pots she kept by the porch had been watered. The actions felt strange at first. They made her heart ache with resentment because they came too late. And yet, they stirred something gentle too. She was used to carrying everything alone these days. Seeing his silent help reminded her of the man he used to be, the man who once built her a swing set in the backyard because she mentioned Sharon might enjoy it, the man who used to rub her shoulders after long days, the man who once made her laugh until she cried. These memories pressed against the wall she had built inside herself. She fought them, hard, because letting them in felt dangerous. But the moment everything shifted, just slightly, came on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Willow returned home from grocery shopping with Sharon. As they reached the porch, Willow noticed a bakery box resting by the door. She frowned, picking it up. There was a small sticky note attached. "Tried my best. Hope it's close to how you remember it. S." Willow opened the box. Peach cobbler, her favorite, a dessert she once mentioned loving from Sebastian's grandmother's recipes, a recipe Sebastian had never quite mastered. Sharon peeked over the box and gasped. "Is that for us? It smells so good." Willow hesitated. It might be. Inside, the cobbler was slightly uneven, the crust a little darker than it should have been. She could almost imagine Sebastian in her kitchen, flour on his shirt, frustration on his face, determination in his posture. They set the groceries aside, and each took a small spoonful. Willow blinked in surprise. It was not perfect, too sweet, a bit overbaked, but somehow good, honest, human. Sharon giggled. Daddy really tried. Willow couldn't help it. She laughed. A real laugh. The first one in weeks, maybe months. It bubbled up unexpectedly, spilling out into the kitchen. Sharon's eyes widened as if hearing something magical. Mom, you laughed. Willow covered her mouth, realizing Sharon was right. Her laughter felt rusty, like rediscovering a piece of herself she didn't know had gone missing. Sharon nudged her. Does this mean you're happy? Willow sighed softly. It means I had a small moment of joy today. She didn't say more. She didn't have answers yet, but she felt something loosen inside her chest. For the first time since the betrayal, her heart didn't feel like a stone, more like something cracked but trying to mend. That evening, after tucking Sharon into bed, Willow sat alone at the kitchen table. The peach cobbler sat beside her, half-eaten. She looked at it, remembering the sloppy crust, the uneven sugar, the obvious effort. She whispered to herself, "Why are you making this harder?" She knew why. Because she saw change. Real change. Not loud, not forced, not rushed. Consistent. Quiet. Intentional. She hated that it moved her. She hated that her heart responded before her mind could stop it. But healing was messy. She was discovering that healing rarely matched anyone's expectations, not even her own. For now, all she knew was this: Sebastian was trying. And she felt it. And she couldn't ignore the shift inside her. Not anymore. Sharon's laughter was the first thing Willow heard early Sunday afternoon, drifting from the backyard like a tiny reminder that childhood still knew how to bloom, even in broken seasons. Willow stepped onto the porch and saw Sebastian kneeling beside the newly repaired fence, handing Sharon her soccer ball after it bounced his way. He hadn't seen Willow yet. His focus was fully on their daughter, listening, smiling gently, brushing leaves off her hair. It wasn't the old Sebastian who used to rush through moments to get back to emails or phone calls. This version seemed present, grounded, paying attention to the smallest things as if they mattered more than anything else. Sharon ran toward the porch, giggling. "Mom, Daddy helped me fix the net. It kept tilting, but he showed me how to tie it right." Willow managed a small smile. "That's good, sweetheart." Sebastian finally looked up. Their eyes met for the first time that day. The air between them didn't tense. It simply held a quiet acknowledgement. That alone was progress. "Hi, Willow," he said softly. "Hi," she replied. A month ago, even a simple greeting felt impossible. Now it felt tolerable, familiar even. When Sharon dashed inside to grab her water bottle, Sebastian stood awkwardly by the fence, brushing dirt from his jeans. He cleared his throat. "I didn't mean to intrude. She just asked if I could help with the net." "It's fine," Willow said gently. "She enjoys her time with you." A hint of relief softened his shoulders. "I'm glad. She's been doing better lately." More smiles. Willow nodded slowly. "Yes, she has." Silence hovered, but not the painful kind. More like two people relearning the rhythm of being in the same space. "Your letter," Willow said, surprising herself as much as him. "I read it." Sebastian's breath caught. "Thank you for reading it." She nodded again, choosing her words carefully. "It made me think." He didn't push. He didn't ask what she thought. He simply whispered, "I'm grateful for that." Then Sharon burst back outside, ending the moment. But something had shifted. A door cracked open, if only an inch. Over the next week, every time Sebastian came for his scheduled visits with Sharon, Willow noticed a visible pattern. Sharon lit up. Her face brightened. Her energy doubled. Her confidence returned. She would run to show him new drawings, ask him to watch her new soccer moves, drag him to the backyard to see the latest things she discovered. One evening, Willow stood inside by the window, watching them as they played a silly game of tag. Sharon was laughing so hard she lost her balance and tumbled gently into the grass. Sebastian scooped her up and spun her in a slow circle, both of them laughing like the world was perfect. A small ache ran through Willow's heart, not jealousy but longing. This was how it used to be. This was the part of him she always believed in. Later that night, after Sebastian left, Sharon climbed onto Willow's bed with her rabbit. "Mom," she whispered. "Yes, baby?" "Do you think Daddy is sad?" Willow blinked, taken aback. "Why do you ask?" Sharon hugged her rabbit tighter. "Because he smiles, but sometimes when he thinks I'm not looking, he looks heavy, like he's carrying something big." Willow's throat tightened. "Daddy is trying very hard right now. He loves you. He's working on himself." Sharon rested her head against Willow's arm. "I'm glad he's trying. I want him to be okay. I want us to be okay." Those last words followed Willow long after Sharon fell asleep. A week later, Willow sat at the dining table with the divorce papers in front of her. She had avoided this conversation with herself for weeks. But tonight, she couldn't ignore it. She stared at the papers, tracing the edges with her fingers. The lines were clear, the signatures simple. The entire situation, legal at least, could be handled quickly. So why couldn't she move forward? She thought of the repaired fence, the letters, the therapy sessions he committed to, his changed work schedule, his quiet humility, his lack of pressure, his respect for boundaries, his patience. And she thought of the moment he helped Sharon tie the soccer net, the way he listened to every word she said, the way he never failed to keep his promises now. The divorce papers suddenly felt heavier than they had ever felt before. She whispered to the empty room, "Maybe, not yet." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't a decision set in stone. It was simply permission to wait, to observe, to breathe, to let time show whether healing was possible. She folded the papers back into the drawer instead of signing them. And that was the first real sign of change. The following afternoon, Sebastian arrived early for Sharon's visit. Instead of waiting in the car, he stood on the porch holding another letter, shorter this time, handwritten on calmer paper. When Willow opened the door, they both froze for a second. There was no anger in her eyes today, no resentment, just caution, and something very faint beneath it, something he didn't dare name yet. "I didn't want to disturb you," he said, lifting the envelope slightly. "This is for whenever you're ready." She reached for it without hesitation, a tiny gesture, but a powerful one. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "How are you feeling today?" Willow hesitated, then answered honestly. "Tired, but better." "I'm glad," he whispered. Sharon emerged behind her, backpack slung over her shoulder. "Daddy." She cheered. Sebastian bent down and hugged her tightly. Willow watched the embrace, warm, steady, genuine. She didn't feel bitterness anymore, just a bittersweet tug she couldn't quite define. As they headed to the car, Willow stepped onto the porch and called out softly, "Sebastian." He turned. Willow gave a small, sincere nod. "Thank you for being consistent." The way his breath caught told her the words meant more to him than she realized. "I'm not stopping," he replied gently. "I want you to see that the tension that had once been a wall between them now felt like a thin veil, present but no longer suffocating. There was still distance, still hurt, still caution, still a long road ahead. But for the first time since the betrayal, Willow didn't feel like they were standing on opposite sides of a broken bridge. They were, slowly, walking toward the middle. The day had started quietly, almost peacefully, as if life was trying to trick Willow and Sebastian into believing things were finally stabilizing. Sharon had been invited to a classmate's birthday party at a nearby neighborhood park. Balloons, cupcakes, chalk drawings, sunshine, children playing tag on the grass. Willow watched Sharon join the group with a smile that felt lighter than recent days. "Have fun, sweetheart," Willow said as Sharon ran ahead, her curly ponytail bouncing with every step. "I will," she shouted back, waving before disappearing into a circle of giggling kids. Willow stayed for a few minutes, chatting briefly with the host parent before heading home to catch up on laundry and paperwork. Nothing felt unusual. Nothing hinted at what was coming. Around 3 in the afternoon, Willow's phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. She answered anyway. "Hello?" A woman's voice, tense but trying to remain steady, responded. "Is this Sharon's mother? This is the nurse at Fort Worth Children's Hospital. Your daughter was brought in for severe abdominal pain." The world tilted. The nurse continued. "She collapsed at the party. The guardian on site called an ambulance. She's alert, but in significant distress. We suspect acute appendicitis. You should come immediately." Willow didn't remember dropping her keys. She didn't remember grabbing her purse. She didn't remember rushing out the door. She only remembered one thing, the sound of her heart pounding harder than it had ever pounded in her life. She reached the car on shaking legs and sped toward the hospital, fighting tears as she repeated, "Hold on, baby, please hold on." Traffic lights blurred through her tear-filled vision. Her hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to ache. Nothing mattered except getting to her child. When she pulled into the emergency entrance, she practically ran through the sliding doors. "I'm here for my daughter, Sharon." Her voice cracked as she approached the desk. The nurse immediately recognized the panic. "They're finishing her ultrasound." "This way." Willow followed, her breathing uneven. Every step down that hallway felt endless. When she finally saw Sharon, small, pale, frightened, lying on a hospital bed with a nurse adjusting her fore, Willow nearly collapsed. "Mom," Sharon whispered, reaching weakly toward her. "I'm here, sweetheart. Mommy's here." Willow kissed her forehead, trying to stay strong even as fear clawed at her. A doctor approached. "Her appendix is inflamed. We need to operate as soon as possible to prevent rupture." Willow nodded, struggling to stay upright. "Do whatever you need to save her." As she sat beside Sharon stroking her hair, she didn't know that across town another phone was ringing at the same moment. He had been at a hardware store looking at wood planks for another backyard repair. Simple home projects had become part of his routine now, a quiet way to replace guilt with action. His phone buzzed. It was the host parent from the party. "Sebastian, something happened." Sharon collapsed. They took her to the hospital. He didn't even hear the rest. He dropped everything, paint samples, wood screws, the measuring tape he had been holding, and ran to his car. His pulse hammered so violently he could hardly breathe. As he drove, his voice trembled. "Please, God, please. Don't let anything happen to her." He sped through intersections, barely aware of anything except the urgency crushing his chest. He feared the worst. He feared losing the child who still called him her hero, even after everything he had broken. He feared never being able to fix anything if he couldn't protect her now. By the time he reached the hospital, he practically sprinted into the emergency department, breathless and frantic. "I'm looking for my daughter, Sharon." She was brought in. The receptionist recognized him from Willow's arrival. "She's with her mother in Bay 3. He hurried down the hall, his stomach twisting. When he reached the doorway, he froze. Willow was sitting beside Sharon, holding her hand. Sharon looked exhausted, barely keeping her eyes open. The sight shredded Sebastian's heart. "Willow," he whispered. Willow looked up quickly. Their eyes met, and for the first time in months, everything, anger, betrayal, resentment, fell away. All that remained was shared fear, shared love, shared panic over the tiny human lying between them. Sebastian stepped forward slowly. Is she okay?" Willow swallowed, her voice shaking. "They think it's her appendix. They need to operate." Sebastian placed a trembling hand on Sharon's arm. "Hey, sweetheart, Daddy's here." Sharon gave a faint smile. "Daddy." Willow watched him, her chest tightening. He looked terrified, genuinely terrified. Not for himself, for their daughter. That fear, that pure devotion, softened something inside her. The doctor returned. "We're preparing for surgery now." Willow's breath hitched. Sebastian instinctively moved closer, his hand brushing hers for the first time since the night he left. Neither pulled away. Because in that moment, they weren't separated spouses. They were parents terrified of losing their child. Willow inhaled shakily. "I'm so scared," Sebastian whispered. "Me too." Raw honesty, raw vulnerability, raw unity. For the first time since the betrayal, they were standing together, not in conflict, but in fear and love for the same child. Sharon was wheeled away toward the operating room, and both parents followed until the nurse gently stopped them with a soft, "This is as far as you can go." When the doors closed, Willow covered her mouth with both hands, shaking as tears spilled over. Sebastian stepped in front of her, voice breaking. "Willow, it's okay. She's strong. She'll be okay." She didn't protest. She didn't tell him to step back. She collapsed into his arms, and Sebastian held her, steady, protective, terrified, and completely present. The swinging doors to the operating area had barely closed before Willow collapsed into the nearest chair, her breath shallow and uneven. The sterile hallway felt too bright, too loud, too empty all at once. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, and she tried to clasp them together to still the shaking, but it didn't help. Sebastian crouched beside her, the fear in his eyes mirroring hers. His voice dropped to a gentle whisper. "Willow, breathe with me. Please, just look at me." She lifted her gaze, and the look on her face nearly crushed him. Raw terror, the kind that strips away every layer of pride or anger or defense. In that moment, she wasn't a wife betrayed or a woman trying to rebuild her life alone. She was a mother afraid she might lose her child. Sebastian took her hands slowly, carefully, as if afraid she might pull away. She didn't. "Sharon's strong," he said quietly. "She's going to get through this." Willow pressed her lips together, fighting more tears. "She was in so much pain, Sebastian. I've never seen her like that. Her voice cracked. "I should have stayed longer at the party. Maybe I would have noticed something earlier." "Willow, no. You didn't do anything wrong." He squeezed her hands. "Appendicitis comes on fast. You couldn't have predicted it." She exhaled shakily and leaned back against the chair, trying to steady herself. For a few moments neither of them spoke. They simply sat together, connected by fear and the weight of the unknown. A nurse walked by with a reassuring nod. "The surgical team is excellent. She's in good hands." Willow nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. She tightened her grip on Sebastian's fingers, almost unconsciously. Normally she might have withdrawn, guarded, careful about creating distance. But tonight wasn't about boundaries or marriage wounds. Tonight was about their daughter. Sebastian moved to sit in the chair next to hers, still holding her hand. "Tell me what happened," he said softly. So she did. In a voice filled with anxiety and self-blame, she recounted the moment the hospital called, the drive, the sight of Sharon curled on the bed, clutching her stomach, the doctor explaining the urgency. When she finished, she wiped her cheeks, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to do this alone." The sentence slipped out before she could stop it. Sebastian froze, not because she said it, but because she said it truthfully, vulnerably. It wasn't a plea for reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness. It was simply the heart of a mother exhausted from holding up the weight of everything. "You don't have to," he whispered. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Those words, spoken with complete sincerity, carried a weight she felt deep in her chest. Minutes stretched into an hour. Nurses came and went. Other families whispered in the waiting area. But Willow and Sebastian remained in their own bubble of fear and hope, fingers still intertwined. At one point, Willow let out a sob she had been trying to swallow. Sebastian immediately wrapped his arm around her shoulders. She didn't resist. She didn't stiffen. She leaned into him with the desperation of someone who had been strong for too long. "I should have seen this coming," she whispered. "Willow, listen to me." His voice steadied. "You are an incredible mother. You are present. You are loving. Sharon knows she's safe with you. This wasn't your fault." She shook her head, unable to stop the tears. "I can't lose her, Sebastian. I can't." "You won't," he said firmly. "We won't." His arm around her tightened protectively. Willow rested her forehead against his chest, and something inside her cracked, not the pain of betrayal, but the heaviness of carrying this fear alone. For the first time in months, Sebastian felt her trust him, not with her heart, but with her grief. It was enough. 20 more minutes passed before Sebastian spoke again, his voice low. "Willow, can we pray?" She didn't answer immediately. Prayer used to be something they did together, before bedtime with Sharon, before long car trips, before big life decisions. It was part of their marriage rhythm, one of the few things that always centered them. Slowly, Willow nodded. Sebastian took both her hands gently. They bowed their heads. He prayed softly but with conviction. "God, please watch over our daughter. Please guide the surgeon's hands. Please give Sharon strength and peace. And give us the strength to be here for her. We trust you with her life. We need you tonight." Willow's shoulders shook again, but this time her tears flowed with purpose, not panic. When he finished, she whispered her own prayer under her breath, a quiet plea for protection, for healing, for the chance to see her daughter smile again. When they lifted their heads, they didn't let go of each other's hands. Something had shifted, a silent bridge built between them in the middle of fear. The waiting room clock ticked steadily as another nurse stepped out to update them. "She's stable. The surgery is progressing well." Willow exhaled a shaky breath, covering her mouth with her hand. Sebastian rubbed her back gently, grounding her. After the nurse walked away, Willow spoke quietly, almost reluctantly. "I didn't want to admit it, but I'm glad you're here. I couldn't have handled this alone." Sebastian swallowed hard. "I'll always be here for you and for her, even if I'm not living in the house, even if you never take me back. I'm here." Willow looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in a long time. His eyes weren't pleading. They weren't defensive. They carried a new depth, shaped by humility and genuine devotion. "I don't know what the future looks like, Sebastian," she said honestly. "But tonight, I needed you." He nodded, voice thick. "And tonight reminded me of something I lost sight of. You and Sharon are my world." She didn't reply, but her silence wasn't cold. It was thoughtful, softening, opening. Sebastian took a slow breath. "Willow, I'm committed to changing. Not for show, not for sympathy, not even just for our marriage. I'm doing this because it's who I should have been all along." A tear slid down his cheek, though he didn't notice. "I love you," he continued, voice breaking. "That hasn't changed. But I also respect you enough to know you need space. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. Just don't doubt that I will spend the rest of my life becoming the man you deserve from the start." Willow stared at him for a long moment, her gaze searching his face. She didn't answer with promises. She didn't pretend everything was healed. But she squeezed his hand. A small gesture. A big meaning. Just then, the surgeon stepped into the hallway, pulling off his gloves. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," he said calmly. "The surgery went well. Sharon is out of danger." Both parents stood at the same time, the same gasp of relief leaving their lips. For the first time since the betrayal, they stood united, not because of pain, not because of obligation, but because they had just walked through the darkest moments side by side. The recovery room was dim and quiet, filled only with the soft beeping of monitors and the muted hum of the hospital's night machinery. Sharon lay peacefully in the bed, her small hands resting atop the blanket, her breathing steady and calm now that the worst had passed. A fresh bandage covered the right side of her abdomen, and her cheeks had a faint flush instead of the frightening pallor she'd worn earlier. Willow stepped into the room first, her heart softening at the sight of her daughter safe. Sebastian followed closely, stopping beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply stood there together, united by the overwhelming relief coursing through them. Finally, Willow whispered, "She looks better." Sebastian nodded, voice low. "Yeah, she does." A nurse entered behind them with a warm smile. "She'll be groggy for a while. Feel free to sit with her. She'll know you're here." Willow approached the bed, brushing a soft curl from Sharon's forehead. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "Mommy's here." Sharon stirred slightly, her lips parting just enough to exhale. Sebastian moved to the other side of the bed, touching her hand gently. "Daddy's here too," he murmured. Even in her groggy state, Sharon's fingers curled weakly around his. That simple gesture nearly buckled Sebastian's knees. The nurse quietly exited, leaving the three of them in the soft glow of the monitor lights. Willow pulled a chair beside the bed. Sebastian did the same on the opposite side. Neither of them planned to leave tonight, not even for a moment. Hours passed slowly. Sharon slept soundly, her body recovering one heartbeat at a time. Willow sat close, stroking her daughter's hand rhythmically. Sebastian leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, watching every rise and fall of Sharon's chest as if memorizing it. At some point, Willow shifted and exhaled deeply, physically and emotionally drained. She pressed her hand against her forehead. Sebastian noticed immediately. "You should try to rest. Even a few minutes." Willow shook her head. "I can't sleep. Not tonight." He hesitated before speaking again. "Can I sit next to you?" She looked at him, surprised, hesitant, but not resistant. After a moment, she nodded. Sebastian moved to her side of the bed and sat in the chair beside her. Without thinking, he placed his hand nearby on the armrest. Willow's fingers brushed his accidentally. Neither pulled away. Instead, gradually, almost imperceptibly, Willow's hand shifted until her fingers rested against his. Not intertwined, but touching, connected. A quiet acceptance. Sebastian didn't move, didn't tighten his hold, didn't break the fragile moment with words. He simply let the contact stay, steady and gentle. For the first time since the betrayal, they sat side by side, united by something deeper than hurt. They sat like that for hours. Sometimes Willow leaned forward to check on Sharon. Sometimes Sebastian adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. Sometimes they said nothing at all, silent companions in a moment too delicate for anything else. The weight of the past few months hung between them, but tonight it didn't divide them. Tonight it felt like a story paused, giving him a rare breath before life continued. It wasn't until nearly 2 a.m. that Willow finally broke the silence. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. "Sebastian?" He straightened slowly. Yeah? Willow didn't look at him at first. She stared at Sharon, brushing her daughter's knuckles lightly. Then she exhaled, steady but emotional. Tonight made me realize something, she whispered. I've been so focused on protecting myself that I forgot something important. She paused, gathering her courage. We're a family. Even broken, we're still a family. Sebastian's breath caught. Willow. She looked at him now, really looked. Not with bitterness, not with anger, with honesty. I'm not ready to say everything is fixed. I'm not ready to pretend the hurt is gone. Another pause. But I don't want this to be the end of us. Not yet. Her voice trembled. I want to try. Not for appearances, not for comfort, but because I still see the man I married somewhere in you. And I want to see where this new version of you leads. The words hit Sebastian with a force so strong he almost reached for her hands immediately. But he restrained himself, respecting her space. Still, emotion filled his voice as he whispered, Thank you. Thank you for giving us a chance, I promise. You won't regret it. A single tear slipped down Willow's cheek, and Sebastian gently wiped it with the back of his finger. Slow, respectful, careful. We'll go slow, she added, and we'll rebuild from the ground up. I'm not promising perfection. I'm just promising effort. Sebastian nodded firmly. Effort is all I've wanted the chance to give. They sat quietly again, the atmosphere warmer now, hopeful instead of heavy. Sebastian lowered his voice, filled with sincerity. Willow, I need you to know something. She turned toward him. I'm never going back to the man I was, not even a fraction. Therapy isn't temporary. The changes I'm making aren't temporary. My priorities aren't temporary. He placed his hand over his heart. I'm yours as long as you'll have me. Broken, imperfect, learning, committed. Willow didn't speak right away. She leaned into her chair, her expression softening into something vulnerable. You're saying the right things, she whispered. But this time, you're showing them too. Sebastian nodded, humbled. Then I'll keep showing them. For life. Sharon stirred slightly, her small voice whispering, Mom. Dad. Both parents leaned in instantly. We're here, Willow soothed, brushing her daughter's hair. We're not leaving, Sebastian added, squeezing her hand lightly. Sharon drifted back to sleep with a faint smile. And just like that, something in the room shifted. The three of them, once divided by a night of betrayal, sat within reach of healing. Before we continue this story, take a moment to like this video if it has touched your heart so far. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you believe in second chances, let us know in the comments. Your engagement helps Mr. Graham's stories reach more people who need these messages. She turned back to Sharon, and Sebastian placed his hand gently over theirs. They stayed that way, three hands layered together, throughout the night, anchored by hope, by love, and by the quiet possibility of a family rebuilding itself from the inside out. The morning after Sharon was discharged from the hospital felt unlike any morning Willow had experienced in months. The sun rose softly over Fort Worth, warming the quiet streets as Willow unlocked the front door and stepped inside, carrying Sharon's overnight bag while Sebastian followed behind with a few extra supplies the nurse had recommended. Sharon moved slowly, still a bit tender from the surgery, but her smile was brighter than Willow expected. Home, Sharon whispered with relief as she walked past the doorway. Willow knelt to remove her daughter's shoes. Yes, baby. You rest, okay? Sebastian hovered in the entryway, unsure how close he was allowed to get. The warmth of the hospital night lingered, but now that they were back in their familiar space, he didn't want to overstep. Where do you want me to put her bag? He asked gently. Willow pointed toward Sharon's room. On her dresser is fine. He nodded, grateful for the direction. When he returned, Willow stood with her hands at her hips, looking around the living room as if the house itself had shifted overnight. Maybe it had, in spirit. Maybe something in all three of them had. She inhaled slowly. Sebastian, before we start anything new, we need structure, clear expectations, safe steps. I completely agree, he said immediately. She paused, thinking through her next words carefully. You can move into the guest room. His breath caught, not with surprise, but with deep gratitude. I'll respect whatever boundaries you set, Willow. Thank you. She nodded. It's not a romantic invitation. It's about stability, for Sharon, and it's about slow rebuilding. I want to see consistency, not just effort during emergencies. You will, he replied firmly. He spent the next hour carrying his few belongings from the motel he'd been staying in. Willow watched him quietly from the doorway as he placed folded clothes into the dresser in the guest room. There was a humility to his movements, a man rebuilding piece by piece, aware that every small action mattered. Once he finished unpacking, he ran a hand across the edge of the dresser and turned to Willow. "If being here ever becomes too much pressure, or if you change your mind, just tell me. I won't hesitate if I need space," she replied honestly. He nodded. Good. There was no tension in that moment, only mutual understanding. Sharon shuffled into the hall, her blanket draped around her shoulders. "Daddy, can you help me pick a movie?" He smiled softly. "Of course. Any one you want." Willow watched them walk toward the living room. For the first time since the betrayal, the sight didn't feel like a knife twisting in her chest. It felt gentle, balanced, exactly what their daughter needed. Later that evening, after Sharon had fallen asleep on the couch during a cartoon marathon, Willow and Sebastian sat at opposite ends of the living room. Neither rushed to fill the silence. Instead, Sebastian gave Willow the space to initiate. "Can we talk about expectations?" she finally asked. "Absolutely." She tucked her legs beneath her, speaking calmly. "We need nightly check-ins, honest, open, without judgment. If something feels off, we talk. If something hurts, we talk. No shutting down, no assuming the other will figure it out." "That's fair," he said. "It's overdue, and I need to see responsibility, not perfection, but maturity. You'll have that," he promised. Every day. They continued speaking for nearly 30 minutes, clearing the air about routines, transparency, boundaries, and how they would handle difficult days when emotions resurfaced. Sebastian didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself, didn't redirect. He listened, fully, Willow noticed, and appreciated it. 2 weeks later, after Sharon had recovered enough to return to school, Willow and Sebastian attended their first joint therapy session. The waiting room felt heavy with the weight of unspoken truths, but they sat side by side anyway, hands resting on their knees. Inside the session, the therapist invited them to speak about expectations, wounds, communication habits, and fears. For the first time in a long while, Willow didn't feel alone in expressing her pain. Sebastian didn't hide behind apologies. He took responsibility without collapsing into self-pity. "I betrayed her trust," he said plainly, "but I'm committed to earning it back through my actions, not my words." Willow swallowed hard. "I'm willing to heal with you, slowly, carefully." Her voice shook, but she held steady. The therapist guided them through breathing exercises, reflective communication, and specific steps for rebuilding emotional safety. When the session ended, Willow felt a small but steady sense of direction. Walking to the car, Sebastian glanced at her. "Thank you for agreeing to do this with me." "I didn't do it for you," she replied softly. "I did it for the family we're trying to restore." He smiled just a little. "I'll take that with gratitude." At home, small routines began returning, not abruptly, but naturally. On Tuesday mornings, Sebastian started making breakfast for Sharon before school. He didn't overstep by cooking extravagant meals, just simple things Sharon loved: scrambled eggs, toast with strawberry jam, warm oatmeal with cinnamon. Willow often leaned against the kitchen doorway watching them, her heart cautiously warming as she saw Sharon's joy return in full. Every Thursday evening became family dinner night. Nothing fancy, just the three of them at the dining table, talking about school, work, and the small victories of the week. On Saturdays, the three of them went for walks around the neighborhood, Sharon holding both their hands as she told animated stories about her classmates and her dreams for summer break. None of these moments were forced. None carried unrealistic expectations. They simply rebuilt what life used to feel like: steady, warm, gentle. One evening, after Sharon fell asleep, Willow stepped onto the back porch. She found Sebastian sitting quietly, drinking tea, watching the evening sky fade into deeper shades. She sat beside him, curling her hands around a warm mug of her own. "Today was a good day," she said softly. He nodded. "It was. We're still taking it slow," she reminded him. "I know," he replied. "Slow is fine. Slow means real." Willow glanced at him, calm, composed, patient. His presence no longer felt heavy or anxious. It felt grounded. She whispered, "Thank you for being consistent." Sebastian swallowed, emotion tightening his throat. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be." They didn't hold hands that night, but the closeness between them needed no touch to be felt. The new foundation was forming, brick by careful brick. Sharon had been back in school for over a month, her energy restored and her laughter filling the house again, and something subtle but unmistakable had begun to shift between Willow and Sebastian. Their home no longer felt divided. It felt cautious, hopeful, and slowly awakening to warmth again. The guest room was still Sebastian's space, and Willow continued insisting on boundaries, but the emotional distance that once felt like an uncrossable wall had softened into something gentler, something that allowed unexpected moments of closeness to bloom. It started with the porch. One evening, Willow stood outside watching the sky fold into shades of soft orange and fading blue. She hugged her sweater around herself, listening to the cicadas hum through the quiet neighborhood. She didn't expect Sebastian to join her, but he stepped outside holding 2 cups of tea, one with honey and lemon, made exactly the way she liked it. "I wasn't sure if you wanted company," he said, offering the mug. "If I didn't, I'd tell you," she replied, accepting it. He smiled knowingly. "That's true." They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the evening deepen. They weren't touching, but the air between them felt warm, familiar. "How was school today?" Sebastian asked. "Tiring," she said honestly. "The kids have been restless this week." He chuckled. "I remember Sharon at that age. Endless questions, endless energy." "Still true," Willow added with a small laugh. Silence settled again, not uncomfortable, just reflective. Sebastian glanced sideways. "Do you remember when we used to sit out here after putting her to bed? We'd talk about everything. Future plans, weekend ideas, random nonsense." Willow exhaled slowly. "A long time ago, yes, but I remember it clearly," he said softly. "I've missed this." She didn't respond immediately, but she didn't walk away either. Instead, she took a slow sip of her tea and whispered, "I've missed it too." That was the first spark of something new. No rush, no pressure, just truth shared in the quiet. During the next weekend, Sebastian finally began the treehouse project he had promised Sharon before everything fell apart. The wood had been bought weeks earlier, but he waited until he was confident the family was in a better place emotionally before starting. Sharon ran outside barefoot, squealing as she pointed to the stack of boards. "Daddy, are we really building it today?" Sebastian grinned. "Today and tomorrow. You're my supervisor." Willow watched from the back door, arms folded, smiling despite herself. She stepped outside and offered, "I can help measure, or paint, or keep Sharon from stepping on nails." Sebastian laughed lightly. "I'll take all the help I can get." Working together felt strange at first, careful, almost formal, but as the hours passed, the stiffness faded. Willow held boards steady while Sebastian drilled them into place. Sharon played nearby, humming songs, occasionally announcing dramatic updates like, "Mommy is better at this than you, Daddy." Sebastian raised an eyebrow, laughing. "Your mother's good at everything." Willow's cheeks warmed, but she didn't shy away from the compliment. Later, when the first panel of the treehouse wall went up crooked, Willow burst into laughter. Sebastian groaned, staring at it like a failed science fair project. "Please tell me it's not that bad," he said. "It's leaning like it's tired," Willow teased. "You try it then," he challenged playfully. She nudged him with her elbow. "Move over." They fixed it together, laughing like two people who remembered how to enjoy each other's company. Paint splattered onto both of them, first by accident, then on purpose when Willow flicked a tiny dot at him. "Oh, really?" Sebastian said, eyes narrowing in mock threat. "Don't even think about it," she warned, backing away. He dabbed a streak of paint across her cheek. Willow gasped, then burst into full laughter, a sound he hadn't heard in months but remembered like a precious melody. Sharon clapped happily. "Mommy's laughing again." Willow wiped her cheek but didn't stop smiling. Sebastian had no words, only quiet gratitude that she felt free enough to laugh near him again. It happened naturally, no planning, no grand gestures. One Friday night after Sharon had gone to a sleepover, Willow and Sebastian found themselves in the living room, neither wanting to retreat to separate spaces yet. Willow sat on the armrest of the couch. "I feel like going out tonight," she said suddenly. Sebastian blinked. "Out? Together?" She shrugged lightly. "We haven't been out in a long time. There's a comedy show downtown, clean jokes, good reviews. You're asking me on a date?" He teased gently, but with hope flickering in his eyes. "I'm asking if you want to go," she corrected softly. He didn't hesitate. "Absolutely." The club was small, warm, and filled with easy laughter. Willow and Sebastian sat close enough for their knees to brush. At first, they laughed politely, but soon they were leaning into each other, wiping tears from their eyes as the comedians delivered one ridiculous punchline after another. During the walk back to the car under the soft glow of streetlights, Sebastian offered her his hand, not boldly, but with a quiet question in the gesture. Willow hesitated for half a breath before she took it. Her thumb slid against his. His heart raced, but he didn't tighten his grip. He let her hold him however she wanted. "How do you feel?" he asked. She looked ahead, not at him. Lighter. "Happier than I expected." "And safe?" he asked carefully. She nodded. Yes, safe. Those words meant everything. A week later, Willow sat alone at her desk, sorting through old documents. At the bottom of one folder sat the divorce papers she had prepared months earlier, unsigned, untouched since the hospital incident. She stared at them for several long minutes. Every emotion resurfaced, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the anger, but those feelings no longer dominated her. In their place stood the months of consistent change, effort, honesty, and healing she had seen from Sebastian. She whispered, "We don't need this path anymore." She stood, walked to the shredder, and fed the papers through one sheet at a time. The slow whir of the machine sounded like closure, firm, final, freeing. Sebastian walked in moments later, stopping short as he saw what she was doing. He didn't speak, fearful of misinterpreting. When the last sheet disappeared, Willow turned around. "We're rebuilding," she said quietly. "Really rebuilding. I'm choosing us." His eyes filled instantly. He stepped closer but didn't touch her until she opened her arms slightly, an invitation. He held her, not tightly, not desperately, but with a gentle reverence. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "I won't waste this." She closed her eyes and held him back. "I know." Morning sunlight poured through the kitchen windows the way it used to. Soft, warm, familiar. A full year had passed since the night Sebastian stood on the porch at 3 a.m., terrified that he had destroyed everything. Now, he stood at the stove flipping pancakes while Sharon danced behind him to a song from her tablet. Willow watched from the doorway with a small, grateful smile. Their home felt whole again, not perfect, just whole, steady, and filled with a peace they had fought hard to earn. The road had been long, painful, humbling, transformational, but they made it. By the time spring returned, the family had fallen into a natural rhythm, one that didn't feel forced or cautious anymore. Sebastian's alarm still rang early, but he no longer rushed out the door without a word. He kissed Willow every morning, hugged Sharon, and prepared a simple breakfast before leaving for the office. Sometimes Willow teased him that he was making up for years of cereal and run mornings, and he would reply, "I'm trying to earn every tomorrow." Willow's mornings felt lighter too. She no longer woke with a knot of fear or resentment in her chest. She trusted her husband again, not blindly but steadily, built on consistent truth. She noticed how he never left for work without telling her exactly where he'd be that day, not because she demanded it, but because he wanted her to feel secure. Sharon thrived the most. Her grades improved, she laughed easier, she slept through the night without waking up anxious. Her world felt safe again. Seeing her parents talk, cook, joke, and cooperate brought back the glow in her eyes that had dimmed during the separation. Their therapy sessions gradually moved from weekly to monthly check-ins. Even the therapist told them, "The strength of your recovery lies in how honestly you faced your damage. That honesty is protecting your future." One bright Sunday, almost exactly 1 year after their lowest point, the three of them walked into church together, the same church where Willow's family had deep roots, where neighbors had once whispered questions and concerns during the separation. Whispers still rose now, but these were different. They're back together. Look at them. Stronger than ever. God is good. Willow wore a soft blue dress, her hand resting comfortably in Sebastian's. Sharon walked between them proudly, swinging their arms like she was conducting a parade. Congregation members greeted them warmly, some with relief, some with joy, some with pure admiration for how they handled their storm. During worship, Sebastian placed his arm gently around Willow's shoulders. She leaned into him with no hesitation. The pastor's message that day was about restoration, and though the sermon wasn't specifically about marriage, both Willow and Sebastian exchanged a knowing glance. After service, Willow's mother hugged Sebastian tighter than she had in months. "I'm proud of you," she said sincerely, "and I'm proud of my daughter too. Healing isn't easy." He nodded, overcome but grateful. Thank you for believing we could get here. Life outside the home changed, too. Sebastian had taken over as assistant coach for Sharon's soccer team that fall. He was terrible at running drills but excellent at cheering loudly and giving the kids confidence. He attended every single practice, rain or shine, tired or energized. The kids adored him for his goofy celebrations whenever they scored. Sharon proudly introduced him to new teammates as "my dad," the loud cheerer. One cool Saturday morning, Willow sat in the bleachers sipping coffee as she watched Sebastian help the kids line up for a scrimmage. She couldn't help smiling at how different he looked compared to the men last year. Lighter, grounded, present. A parent sitting next to her nudged her gently. "Your husband is wonderful with the kids." Willow nodded, a soft pride warming her chest. "He's worked really hard this year. I'm grateful." Through the fence, Sebastian looked up at her. She waved. He mouthed, "Thank you for not giving up on us." She mouthed back, "Thank you for fighting for us." By summer, the last traces of fear and tension had dissolved into a bond deeper than what they had before the betrayal. Their communication was sharper, their affection intentional, and their commitment visible in every part of their lives. They spent quiet nights on the porch again, this time not reminiscing about the past, but planning for the future. "We survived something most couples never come back from," Willow said one evening as she rested her hand on his chest. Sebastian lifted her knuckles to his lips. "We didn't just survive it, we changed from it. I'll honor that change every day." "You already do," she whispered. He brushed a curl behind her ear. "We're stronger now, more honest, more aware of each other, and I love you more today than I did the day we got married." Willow smiled, tears gathering but not falling. "I believe you, and I love you too." Inside the house, Sharon called from her bedroom, asking for a bedtime story. Willow and Sebastian looked at each other and laughed softly. "Race you," he said playfully. She rolled her eyes but raced anyway. They collided gently at the doorway, laughing as they tucked their daughter in together. It was a simple moment, but it held everything they had fought for. Willow and Sebastian's journey had shown that mistakes don't have to destroy what's sacred if the person who broke the trust is willing to rebuild it brick by brick. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing to move forward with wisdom. Love survives through action, consistent, humble, steady action. Families can heal when honesty replaces silence and effort replaces excuses. Growth is possible at any stage of a marriage when both people commit to learning. Their home now carried the sound of restored laughter, shared meals, quiet prayers, playful teasing, and solid peace. Their second chance wasn't a fairy tale. It was earned, it was fought for, and it was real. Thank you for watching this story on Mr. Graham Stories. If this touched your heart or taught you something meaningful, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more powerful life lessons. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. We appreciate you.